example. I'm good at sports, but not anything that involves dance or actually singing or anything.
Nice. Well, we don't all have to be talented at everything, and we are now officially live. And the talent that you're going to showcase today on this podcast, think of it as a talent show for delivering the best talent to a company. And today you are the two contestants, and it's not a competition. This is there's two first places, so you have a very good chance of both winning. Um, so for those of you who are joining us, yes, we're talking about talent shows, and today we have a people panel with two amazing people. And we're going to talk about people, and we're going to focus on the show as though it's a talent show to share as much information as we know here on the ScaleUp Valley podcast. You can get all of these and more at scaleupvalley.com. My name is Ryan Foland. My talent, my sharpest tool is speaking. So I speak in the keynote format, in a workshop format with other people. And I believe if you speak in public, you are a public speaker, and we are all here together. So I enjoy talking. I also enjoy listening. And so today I'm going to be the host, as I am going to be filling out my stick figure drawing, starting with the two people panel, taking notes, probably chirping in along the way and enjoying the conversation. But at this point, I'm going to pass the mic to Mike so that Mike can be the host or the MC of today's talent show, where we're going to talk about people panel and how to deliver world-class talent. Mike is yours, Mike.
Thank you, Ryan. And the topic today, and welcome to our audience. Really a pleasure to be here with Rodica and Shauna. Rodica is the Director of Talent Acquisition at MoneyLion, and Shauna is the VP of Global Talent at Talkdesk. And we are here together to discuss how to deliver a world-class talent experience. But yeah, to have the opportunity to get to know more about Shauna and Talkdesk. Shauna, if you could share a little bit an overview about your career and what you guys are doing at Talkdesk, it would be amazing.
Sure. So thanks for having me on the podcast. My name is Shauna, and I was the first US hire at Talkdesk. I started back in 2012, just a few months after the company was founded. And I initially started on the marketing team. So I was the only one in marketing for the first 3 years, kind of built our marketing infrastructure from the ground up, and built that team as well. And then in about 2016, we had 120 people in the company globally, but we didn't have anyone in a talent acquisition function or an HR function. And but we've been looking for a while. And at that time, our COO asked me, he said, Shauna, I think you can do this, right? So why don't you step over from your marketing position and help establish the talent acquisition function? And so my first thought was, you're crazy, but I can do it. So I took the challenge, and in 2016, I stepped into that function and built my team from the ground up. And now we have 620 employees in the company globally. We have 6 offices, and we're planning to scale to 1,000 by the end of this year and 2,000 by the end of next year. And then just a little bit about Talkdesk. We've raised about over 100 million in funding through a Series B. We're currently a unicorn, so we're the 3rd unicorn in Portugal. So we have over $1 billion valuation, and we make contact center software for mostly enterprise companies.
Amazing track records, and it's incredible. Every time that I talk with the team, the numbers are going up and up and up and never stop. So I'm in touch with Talkdesk since they were kind of less than 50. So it's amazing to see that you are 10 times bigger today, and that you'll be 4 times bigger in the next 2 years. So, which is quite amazing. Congratulations. And Rodica, it's really a pleasure to have you here. It would be awesome also to get to know more about you.
Likewise, thanks a lot for the invite. Appreciate it. Well, yeah, my career in MoneyLion started about 2 months ago. Kind of relate to what Shauna was just saying, moving from marketing to the talent, and then being asked to set up the whole talent department. To take a step back, born in Moldova, where I graduated 2 bachelor degrees. The main one would be in finance, and then the second one was in law. After that, I wanted to try a career in the public, in the government. Stayed with them for 3 years and decided that that's not for me. Moved to Sweden, where I've graduated my master's degree again in corporate and financial management, and that's when I started to flirt with the idea of working in the startup environment. Helped a couple of startups to set up their basic business development team and basic fundraising functions and accounting, finance. And then the whole crazy thought of moving to Southeastern Asia somehow ended up into my LinkedIn. So I was like, why not? Let's try it. Moved to Kuala Lumpur 2.5 years ago. In a startup, was the finance and fundraising manager with them. But being such a small team, we were around 10 people on the ground. I was really exposed to all the departments around the team. So finance, fundraising, accounting, HR, business development, even a little bit of product. Stayed with them for a year. It was a very cool experience, and I learned literally a lot. Then moved to the mobility industry, where again, I was brought in the team when we were around 20 people, and when I left after 1.5 years, we were 160. So moved around different functions. Again, set up the talent team for like 3-4 months, and then moved towards marketing. So that's where I left my previous company. MoneyLion was more of I was convinced to join them, and was not really looking for a change. And then I was like, okay, sure. It was a very interesting challenge that was offered to me, and I was more than happy to jump on board. Team-wise, we are in Kuala Lumpur 160 plus, expecting to grow at least by 50 more towards the end of this year. Overall, in the company, we are 350 plus. So what is MoneyLion? Yeah, it's a financial product, membership. We actually invented the membership system for the finance industry. We are operating only in the US. That would be our main market as of now. And what we offer is literally different memberships that include a variety of financial products. 3 main categories would be banking, would be loans, and then investment products. Started 5 years ago as a lending company, and slowly we expanding towards more products. Our headquarters is in New York, and we do have office in San Francisco, Salt Lake City, and Kuala Lumpur. So that would be briefly about us.
Talkdesk also in Salt Lake City, so
okay. Let me guess, is the customer support over there?
No, actually, we have a lot of our post-sales organization and our go-to-market teams, and also our G&A teams.
Okay.
Support is one of the teams that we don't have there. It's an amazing market for talent, and we actually tapped into one of our competitors who's there, and we hit this kind of like critical inflection point where we decided we wanted to get an office and expand kind of our footprint there, and we've been really, really pleased with the results so far.
Awesome.
So, and we are already understanding that you have different offices and that both companies are expanding. So it's an interesting way to start. So how do you stand out from the crowd in markets where you are well known, but who are very competitive? And I would say that San Francisco and New York are definitely 2 of them. And in markets where you are expanding to, where your brand is not so well known, I'm thinking on the case of Talkdesk now, scaling to Europe, and namely to London, where you have the chance of explaining what the brand is and getting the brand more well known. So, Shauna, what are your thoughts about opening new offices and standing out from the crowd in your domestic markets and in your new markets?
Yeah, so I think you brought up a great point. I would say we operate in some of the toughest talent markets in the world, right? So Silicon Valley, and the Silicon Slopes. That's a really, really tough market, and not all of them do we have the same brand awareness, and that's what's interesting for us. We've started to penetrate into different markets, and we've realized that the talent acquisition process and function looks very similar to what it was back in 2016 for us in Silicon Valley. So there are a couple of things. So I can talk really from a tactical standpoint, but I think what might be really helpful is to think about our strategy. The first, and it sounds simple, but it's so crucial, is that I've built a world-class talent organization. So our talent team is what I consider to be one of the best in the world. And that's really important because we're on the front lines. And that's one of our competitive differentiators, right? If we're sending a really polished and crisp personalized message, if we're very clear and articulate when we get on the phone with that person, oftentimes what I've heard from candidates are wow, I've never met with a recruiter that can answer really strategic questions about the business, that has been able to take me through the process with such professionalism. And so for me, that's important. And then the other thing that we did is we added a layer on top of that. So not only are our sourcers and our recruiters some of the best in the world, but we've also built a talent operations function. And so our talent operations team is a global team. We have a talent operations manager in San Francisco, and then she has direct reports in every single office location. And their whole job is to optimize our efficiency, effectiveness, and the candidate experience. So those are our three talent pillars, and the whole team is focused on optimizing those three. And so I can talk through each pillar if you're interested, but for us, that is, it basically allows us to run a really effective organization, a very efficient organization, and provide the candidates that we interface with the world-class candidate experience so that we can move with velocity in some of the toughest markets and hire some of the best in the world.
If I may add a couple of things that are happening at MoneyLion. I think this is a very, very interesting question for me, especially when I have to hire in Kuala Lumpur, when we don't operate in Kuala Lumpur. So you would have you would have a decent amount of people that you want to hire. And then when you tell them what you do, they don't really know, they haven't heard about your product. So you have to tell them, okay, we actually operate in US and we are very powerful there, and it's the most important financial membership in US. So I guess that's where we have to make the difference. And a difference, again, is definitely made by the candidate experience and by, as you said, as Shauna said, being able to answer to all of their questions and having the talent team to be more of a recruiter or sourcer. They really need to understand the business requirements. They really need to go sometimes even into the technical questions. And they also need to move fast. And that's, again, what brings me and my team, I guess, higher than most of the other teams from fintech industry is the speed of hiring. We defined a very, very structured process, and we do use a lot of tools that would help us to provide this experience and to not to get lost among the emails, but to make sure that everyone is attending on time and everyone is kept in the loop with what's happening next. And we are always there for our candidates. When it comes to the market where we operate, of course, it's much easier to get applications, so less of efforts on being active and on the sourcing side. But again, definitely the product for us, the product itself helps us to hire. It's a very cool industry, and it's a cool product that we are building and we've built so far, and that is bringing on board amazing people that want to be part of this, innovating the fintech industry and shifting the whole banking system in US for now.
It's very interesting. Both of you talking about the delivering a world-class candidate experience. And what do you think are the drivers to kind of assure that we have a world-class candidate experience? What are the main touch points? So how do we work on the candidate experience? And Rodica, we can start with you this time.
how do we work on the candidate experience, right? As I said, for me, the main important part, the most important part is to be sure that I'm honest with my candidates, that I attend them very, very quickly on their answers, and also the fact to provide them a lot of clarity on what's next. The process is well defined. When I step on the first call, they know what's going to happen in the very last, like, fourth call, and they also know how long it's going to take them to get there. That's the first thing that I wanted to bring with me at MoneyLion, and that's the main thing that I'm coaching and mentoring my team to be able to provide this answers for the candidates. Beside that, of course, it comes with not only the experience that you give them when they're in the hiring process, but also what's happening next, and also what they hear about the company from those inside the company and outside the company. Of course, they go on Glassdoor and they do check, and that's part of my team to make sure that we do have a good score there, and that's coming only if you are actually able to provide a good experience for those who work with you and those who want to work with you.
Got it. So, Shauna, would you like to add something about best practices that you are applying in Talkdesk?
Yeah, sure. So very similar. So for us, it started with standardizing the entire process. So not only standardizing, but when I first moved into that role, I really standardized each process. So each candidate, regardless of the role, location, hiring manager, recruiter, would go through similar steps within the process. But I also standardized what happens within each process, right? So I've built out our first touch phone call scripts, also an email cadence. And so every candidate, regardless of their background experience, regardless of their geo, hiring manager, or recruiter, receives that same experience. That for us is really important because we know that first, nothing's going to slip through the cracks, that we can move through the process with velocity. So we don't have to have a recruiter thinking, okay, what should I say next? Or if they ask this question, what is a typical response? Because we've got it all built out for them. And then, for us, that creates an experience where everyone understands what's expected of them within the process. So not only the candidates, but also our recruiters, our hiring managers, and everyone that's involved in that interview panel, so that we can all function in lockstep together. When that candidate comes on site or they make it on site, everything is lined up for them so that there are no hiccups, and they feel that they're very well taken care of. And then the final step is really just making sure that we provide that white glove experience from a personal standpoint. So our talent ops team is that main point of communication throughout the entire process. So really from sourcing to close, they have a resource above and beyond their recruiter and their hiring manager. But when they come on site, we treat them as if they're family, or we're welcoming them into our organization, because when we look at our funnel metrics, we know that for every hire that we place, we reject about 199 folks, or we interface with 199 folks, and almost all of them we're rejecting. Those individuals could go on to be our brand advocates, potential customers. They're often, candidates in the future. They're referral sources. And for us, it's so important because we can not only highlight our culture, but also our product and where we are in the market, so that if we do provide that world-class experience, that they can go on and be advocates for us. So we invest a lot of resources, time and effort, and training in this. And I think it's working really well.
Just to add a small thing on what also Shauna said, for me, what I do in the very last stage when it comes to rejecting a lot of people, and unfortunately we do have to do, it's part of our job. And then when it comes to this rejection email, I think most of us, we've received those templates where, okay, everyone gets it. I try to make it as customizable as possible. And then I do have this part, like, if you need feedback from me, feel free to reach out. And I'll be very honest, last couple of weeks, I've received so many emails from candidates asking for the feedback. Hey, do you mind actually sharing what can I improve for my next job applications? And what I've told to my team, and I hope I can keep it as long as possible, and I hope I will have the capacity to do so, I actually provide this feedback. I would always go back to the candidate. I would say, look, in your side, I think that the technical assessment was not the best, so it would be really great if you can invest a little bit more time and polish a bit your Java skills, and then we can take it from there in a couple of months. Or on your side, communication was something that we couldn't align with, and it would be great if you come back to us, but first work on this and that and that. So this is the very final step where most of the companies probably will say, okay, that's not important. I've disqualified that person already, so I would rather invest in those that are in the pipeline already. Well, I think the other way around. I think everyone should be treated the same, despite the stage, if they made it or did not, because they can be the advocates for you, for your company. They can speak about MoneyLion for among their friends, and you never know where those applications would come from.
Got it. And you were also talking before, Shauna, about efficiency and effectiveness as some of the pillars that you are focused on, or that are your key strategic priorities for the talent function. And I was thinking in terms of metrics. So what are you measuring every single quarter? What is really important to you in terms of KPIs? And what is your team looking to?
Good question. So there are certain things that we actually really care about within talent acquisition at Talkdesk, and then there are certain things that we don't actually care about as much. And so I'll give you an example of some of the KPIs that we're tracking, and we've established not only a monthly cadence, but a quarterly cadence. And then also we report back to the business an annual cadence. And then we report back to the business our OKRs on a quarterly cadence. So not only to our executive team, but also to the entire company, which is a new experience for us, but it's also really important to increase transparency across the organization. So from an efficiency standpoint, so we look at it across those three pillars. So efficiency, effectiveness, and candidate experience. I've kind of charted that together. And so on efficiency standpoint, we're looking at hires by department, recruiter, source, hiring manager, and then we break down source into another layer, inbound source. We look at secondary source, so inbound source and referral source. That's really helpful for us because we can decide whether or not where we should allocate our funds and spend kind of our time as an organization generating more candidates. And we're also tracking, of course, hires to goal. So hires to forecast is really important within the business. We're not necessarily tracking time to hire. And I'll talk about why for us. It's important to find like top quality talent. Usually we're getting pressure from all angles. We're getting pressure from the business, pressure from the executive team. We don't have to add that another layer of like putting a stopwatch on for the recruiters. They're trying as hard as they can, right? And so I actually don't care if it takes us 2 months or 3 months to place a really key hire, as long as it's the right hire, because it could actually set you back further if it's not. We're also looking from a high level prospecting activity. So especially for sourcers, we're looking at number of conversions per week, but also all of our recruiters are full cycle recruiters. So that's really important. So prospecting activity and also conversion rates through funnels. And then in effectiveness is actually really interesting. So I've created a metric. It's called the magic number. And essentially what we're doing is we're looking at the higher quality score and the higher difficulty score. And then I'm taking those two numbers and I'm multiplying them together. And then I'm taking a sum of all the hires that recruiter placed within that quarter, and their target is 100. So overall, their sum of magic numbers their threshold should be 100. The reason that's important is I always give this example. If Tiago, our CEO, asks me to place a VP of finance, I could do it tomorrow, right? I could find you a really terrible VP of finance and I'll do it tomorrow. But if we want to find a world-class VP of finance, that is a very different ask. And we should be, assessing our recruiters on that, right? So it's not enough to just say, I want you to place 2 hires per month. I want to take into consideration the difficulty of placing those 2 hires so that I can look across my organization and compare a recruiter that might be an executive recruiter with someone who's very early in their career, and kind of standardize, some of those how I'm evaluating them across the board, and they can see it on a leaderboard as well. And then some of the others are higher quality by source. So we're looking at what sources are generating the highest quality candidates or new offers or new hires. And then other things like offer acceptance rate, retention, referral rate. hiring manager feedback, and then kind of a self-evaluation. And then the third pillar is candidate experience. We're actually sending out surveys to candidates directly, not only that are currently in the process. So we've got 2 time points. We'll send them out, when they're in the process, and also after they're rejected. And then the final is that we're asking new hires about their candidate experience, and also the experience during the critical period, which we call we consider between when they sign their offer letter to their start date. So overall, kind of how their process was within the recruitment cycle at Talkdesk.
Got it. I have a follow-up question, but I would also like to give the opportunity to Rodica, if you want to add something in terms of metrics.
I'm in the process of just setting up this dashboard. I think that's, again, the change that I want to bring with the MoneyLion to have this data-driven approach when it comes to hiring. This is something that was not really done before me. So just setting the dashboards. Most of the KPIs and metrics that Shauna mentioned are or will be reflected in my dashboard. For now, the main priority for me is just to understand where the hires are coming from. What's the channel? So I would track, is that source profile? Is that coming from a referral? Is this from the career fair, or is this from a partnership that I have with the university? Just really understanding where they're coming from, and again, understanding what's the priority and where the funds should go for the next quarter. And then I've also brought this approach of reactive hiring, and when it comes to coach my team to go on LinkedIn or any other channels and to source for people, I need to have this quality sense for them. So that's something that I don't like to track the number of the people that they are sourcing. I would like to track how many of those people actually go in the room for an interview, and how many after that first interview are converted to the technical assessment part. So if someone is bringing in hundreds of candidates, they say I've sourced so many people, but then I see that the conversion rates are very low. This means that we lack quality in that part. So that's something that I want to really focus on the first months to invest on the quality rather than quantity. But yeah, they also something that I think Shauna didn't mention. I would track the dropout rates. Having technical assessments in place, especially when it comes for more senior profiles. I've received this feedback that they don't really like, or and I would understand why, to go into these assessments that take 5 or 7 days. So for me now, in the beginning of my role with MoneyLion, I really want to understand how I can differentiate between different roles and adjust the process based on the different profiles. So I would track the drop-off rate per each role, and I would see in what stage they drop off and what can I change in order to keep more people in the pipeline, but at the same time to meet the hiring needs and to provide the quality and information that the hiring manager would request from my department.
Got it. Sounds awesome. And I know that you, Ryan, have a question, right?
Yeah, so I was just on my Twitter feed, a friend of mine, Joe, who has a company called CloudApp. He shared some statistics from what he was saying is the Harris poll, and it essentially said 70% of U.S. employees say that they're at least somewhat likely to leave their current company and accept an offer with a new company that is known for investing in employee learning and development. So, you know, I've candidly here, I have found a lot of words that you guys have said, okay? But nowhere on there have I heard or seen a mention of pitching employee development as part of your process. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you've said here, but I'm curious, do you agree with that statistic? And how are you positioning the support that you're going to give employees as a world-class talent organization to make them world-class, which is not even a word, but I just said it. So I'm curious what you think about that.
You want to go ahead? You can go first.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good. That's a very good question. We do have in our HR function the learning and development team, but you know, being with a startup, I'm not sure if you really need to go into this phase when you learn so much on the job, and when you have to go into so many nights and into so many tasks that might not even be part of your role. However, what happens at MoneyLion, and what we do really support and advise our colleagues to do, we do allow our teams to and our people to move around different departments. So if someone is in the data science team and they say, I might be interested in the data engineering team, so we would definitely support them spending 20 to 30% of their time, and just try to understand if data engineering is something that's interesting for them. Same goes for the product engineering team. So we would support these changes between team, and we would allocate this free time for them to look around in the company and understand if there is something else that they would like to learn. Now, when it comes to a proper program, we are in the process of working with one of the training providers, and we want to get this corporate package where we would bring everyone on board, and the manager would design this career path for them, and they would work mainly on the technical part. I mean, MoneyLion, I think 80% of our employees, they are technical people. So that's why we would go for these courses online. We will make sure that they have the skills, the newest, they work with the newest technology, and that they are updated on what's coming next. But yeah, I'll just finish with what you've said. It's a very important question, and I do get it more and more often in most of the interviews that I had. People ask, and they do compare offers based on their learning and development opportunities that there are within the company. They will specifically ask you, okay, good, salary is okay, that's okay. What about learning and development? How do you help me grow within the company, or outside, or on a personal level within like next 2 years? And what we also do, we do an IQ test. So that's something that I want to work on and define a program around that. So we do an IQ test when they join the company in their first, actually last stage in the interview. And then the plan is to do that IQ test over next 6 months, and to compare the results, if something changed or not. And then to have individual talks with every colleague, and to understand what's lacking, or where should they invest. Do they need more time in order to personally to grow? So that's something outside the job, not that much related to what they do on a day-to-day basis, but something that we want to invest in as well.
Interesting. So 2 quick things, just hearing. One is that you said learning and development, which
Yes.
it seems like a different phrase as opposed to professional development, which it seems to be getting outdated. So learning and development, and the fact that you have them take an IQ test and then make them smarter, and then another IQ test, that's something that I think would be appealing in the recruitment process, right? Like, hi, no, wait a minute. Yeah, no, hold on. Before you get started, we will make you smarter. Okay, so where are we going? Interesting.
I've received a lot of feedback about this IQ test. I think it makes our process a little bit sexier. You know, when they go into this final interview, and we say, okay, now we do have a small test for you. It's literally 20 minutes, and it's not part of the decision. It doesn't affect the decision. Yeah. So if someone scores 11 and someone scores 23, we wouldn't choose the one with the higher score. It will be purely based on the feedback that we get from the hiring manager and overall results of the previous stages. But most of the candidates, they say, oh, I've never done it before, but it's really cool. Very interesting. You're the first company that actually made me do that, and it's nice. So that's something that make them laugh in the very last stage of the process.
How about you, Shauna? Comments on that concept, and do you use it as a leverage tool for your team to attract?
Yeah, so similar. So we do have a learning and development function. One of the hooks, so our strategic advantage within this market is our accelerated pace of growth, and also to be able to work with world-class leaders and a world-class team. And so a lot of that growth and learning happens with on-the-job experience, which is great. A lot of what we talk about within the recruitment process is the accelerated career trajectory. So one of the advantages of being within a hypergrowth organization is that often you're placed into roles before you would be in another organization that could be potentially a little bit more stagnant. So we'll kind of push you into that role and then provide you the scaffolding and support that you need in order to be successful in the role. And so we'll talk about folks within the organization that did benefit from that accelerated career trajectory. And similarly, we deploy a personnel assessment within the recruitment process. It's called the Wonderlic. And so it's similar. So it assesses somebody's cognitive ability, kind of their motivation for the role, personality, and other constructs that were defined within a normative sample to be predictive of success within the role. That's actually really interesting as well, because what it does is it allows us, it also provides suggestions on how best to support those individuals once they come on board into in the organization. So it gives suggestions for a 30, 60, 90-day plan. It also gives suggestions on strengths and areas for development. And we use that as a resource, as a tool for that new manager to set that new hire up for success. And so it is optional. It can be a data point that we do to inform our decision making within the process. It's positioned as a pre-employment selection test. But similarly, we lean on all the other data points within the process as well. And we would never make a hiring decision based on a single output or a number. We're looking at it kind of as aggregate data across the process.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. Thank you.
And the question that I wanted to follow up with Shauna before was really of the pressure that you feel from the CEO for leadership positions, and I assume from the leaders to management positions. And usually in those cases, imagine that you are the VP of sales and you are opening a new market, and you need to show to your investors that in 2, 3, or 4 quarters, you are able to prove that you can access the market and start having those initial customers in a very aggressive growth curve. So how do you manage those expectations? And a second question might be, was it different when you were in the beginning of the company and now? Do you feel that you have more time now or less time now compared to the beginning to fulfill those expectations?
Okay. That's a really good question. So so I report directly to the CEO, and talent acquisition within Talkdesk is seen as a really strategic function. We actually historically for the last 2 years have been one of the top performing teams in terms of attainment and delivery back to the business. And so the pressure is there. It's similar for any other department head. And I would say even more so because the company during this growth phase are really leaning on us to execute. So, how I manage expectations across the organization, it is setting really clearly defined goals, also really clearly defined and structured process, and then communicating our progress towards those goals. Tiago, as a CEO, is really aggressive, right? So we're never ever going to recruit fast enough. We'll never be able to meet his expectations, but he knows that as long as we get close, he's happy. And so for me, it's all about communication. It's all about being really aggressive and then translating kind of his vision for the organization into a tactical recruitment strategy and executing on that, and then building KPIs and metrics around that so we can communicate not only to him, but back to the business our progress towards that. The other is that we are a strategic business partner to hiring managers, right? So for us, it is recruitment at Talkdesk in general is it's a team effort. And so if we're failing to meet kind of our goals, metrics, we're usually failing to do so with one department or one hiring manager. And those are conversations that we can have with them to think about how we can partner better, how we can put together, more attractive or compelling pitch, whether or not our compensation expectations are misaligned with the market and we have to readjust that. And so in general is what we've noticed is that if we follow the process, if we've set clearly defined goals and we're operating the same, that there's no reason why we shouldn't execute on that as long as we're working together. And then in terms of like, do I have more time now to meet Tiago's needs? No, absolutely no. I have less time. I was looking at the numbers. So this quarter we scaled our recruitment function to about 15 globally to almost 50. And I not only have recruitment, but also global IT and facilities under me. And so we've seen dramatic shifts within the organization. I have 25 direct reports. So of that 50, 25 report to me directly until we can consolidate those. So I don't have, I don't have a lot of time to kind of manage expectations, but I have built that regular cadence to do so. And we have those checkpoints. And so I know it's expected of me. And so I always put my team first, my people first, but that's second.
That's awesome, Shauna. And Rodica, in terms of what is the importance of the leaders in terms of attracting the managers, and even the importance of the CEO, what is his role also helping to attract the leaders? So is personal branding important? Is important that he or she becomes a thought leader in the space and that is able to attract the team and not only putting all the pressure on the function that is attracting those talents?
That's a very, very good question, and I was thinking about like what are my main sources or what are my main advantages to attract the talent here in Kuala Lumpur. I'm mainly focusing on hiring for the KL market now, and I work closely with the CTO, former CTO. Now he's the Chief AI Officer. So and then I realized that he's actually one of my main advantage when it comes to hiring the data scientists. He's very well known in the Kuala Lumpur market for his data science experience. And whenever I jump on a call with someone very senior from well-known companies in Kuala Lumpur, they would know the name and they would say, yeah, I've heard about your CTO, very cool guy. And I also heard about your assessment, and I've heard it's very complicated. So I'm more than happy to jump on board to do that and see if I can get into the room and pitch it in front of your CTO. So for me, that's definitely helping on the branding side, and is definitely one of the source of the applications. Also, people that are working within the company, they do like he's mostly in the office and he's very still hands-on and very much investing a lot in the team. And those that stay and that have this chance to meet him on a daily basis and see him on a daily basis in the office are really happy, and they bring. So another recruitment channel for me is the referral. 25% of the hirings for the last year are coming from referrals. And this really says something about the company, about the manager that are the people that are working within the company, the technology that we are using, the product, the overall growth, and the mission that we are achieving in here.
That's awesome. So, and unfortunately, we need to start preparing the wrap up for the episode. So I would like to ask a final question to both of you. And Shauna, if you would have the opportunity to meet you again in the beginning of your career, or to catch up with yourself in the beginning of your career at Talkdesk, so what advice would you give to yourself?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. For me, I would say just do it. So Talkdesk for me it's been a once in a lifetime opportunity. I had to kind of not pivot my career, but I have two careers, and I had to kind of switch and deprioritize one for Talkdesk. And there were a lot of people along the way that said, don't do it. You shouldn't do it. Can't do it. And I started to kind of internalize that as well. It created a little bit of hesitation. I think one of the things I'm most grateful for is for Tiago and for Geraghty, our COO at the time, that really, really pushed me, right? So they always believed in me. Sometimes before, like more than I believed in myself. And so I would say, just do it. It's gonna work out okay. And it is gonna be that once in a lifetime opportunity that you think it's gonna be. Yeah.
And for the ones who follow you on LinkedIn, you also empower a lot your team. So you really cherish them. So maybe that's also an inspiration from them at the time. And Rodica, what in your case, what would you say to yourself?
Okay, I was thinking meanwhile, probably I would say to myself to sleep more, to do a little bit more, to spend more time with myself and to practice more sports. Because normally when we go into this working hours, extra working hours, that's what you stop doing. You stop sleeping, you stop going to gym, and you stop reading eventually. So that's something that I would say to myself. But I mean, that's more on a funny note. Seriously, I think I would just tell myself to stop overthinking and to start to stop striving for this perfect job. So I would just tell myself, move fast and make sure that you still deliver the quality that is expected from you, but do not overthink the task that you are given to do. In a startup environment, you really need to be fast and still be fast and good. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you for the amazing conversation. I had a lot of fun. And Ryan, that's your show. And you just need to unmute first. but we are getting what you mean.
Yes. All right. So here's the breakdown. We started with these two lovely ladies in the middle of the panel, and these are all key phrases and words that I took out from it. So in order to sum up, I'm going to stick with a magic 3, and I'm going to stick with something that stood out in the beginning of the recruitment process or the talent show, and then something in the middle of the talent show and at the end of the talent show. And as you see up here in the top, which you probably can't see, the beginning part of the process that I was really hearing was the need for standardization, for having all of your questions already answered, for having systems, for having KPIs, all the stuff that you really wish you would have thought about first. I think it's great to start there. In the middle, I think what I was most impressed with was using your products to sell what you're doing, but I had to go back in there and add people as well. Because if you have a CMO who is essentially a product of the company that you can, lure people to convince them that there's more learning, more productivity. And I thought it was interesting that both of you to some extent said that on-the-job training is where you get your learning. But I don't know if everybody is mentioning that as a byproduct. You might think, well, we have this online training program that you get as a bonus, but you could also position it as saying, look, you're in this high growth company, you're going to have a chance to spend time in other spots. That is how we help you learn. I think there's an interesting connection. And then finally, I was really impressed by the amount of metrics in the end, where if I could just go back and replay those metrics, that's what I would play on a cheat reel for somebody who's new to this hiring business, to making sure that what you're doing is actually moving the needle. So those would be my beginning, middle, and end, and you can pull out the rest of them, or if you want, you can take this, you can share this episode with your friends, you can find other ScaleUp Valley podcasts, because this is what we do. It's a talent show where we're helping people showcase what they did, what they do, what they wish they would have done from the very beginning, to help us learn that we need more sleep, we need to play sports, and we need to just do it. Sound good? All right, so there we go. We have 45 minutes and a recap of about 30 seconds, but this has been fun. And for most people, we end up on both sides of the spectrum. At a certain point, we are talent, and then at a certain point, we choose the talent. So it's important to understand this whole process, and it's particularly interesting with high growth scale-up companies, because you have the problems that most of us wish we had, the problem of growing too fast. So cheers to growing, cheers to sleeping, cheers to sports, cheers to everything, and cheers to the process that convinces those 70% of employees that they would do better on the other side of the grass, because your grass is growing and you want to help them grow. On behalf of everybody, I'm going to stop saying stuff because I feel like I will just keep going. But this has been another episode. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, ladies. This has been great. And we will see everybody online.